All right. Should be live in a moment. Okay. We're live. Woo! Well, everyone's enjoying their St. Patrick's Day so far. What was I talking about today? Yo, how's it going, Zaz, too? Welcome. Oh, yeah. Oi! Alright, let's get the ball rolling. How goes your St. Patrick's Day so far, Zaz 2? Hope it's going well. I feel like my sound volumes are off, but let me know if I sound weird. I'll keep an eye on things on my end too. Going well? That's good. That's good. Hope no one heard that really loud Windows sound. Alright, let's see. Sound okay? Alright, that's good. Got a lot to talk about. Might as well sound okay. Because it is 1 p.m. Eastern Time, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, that's how I introduce myself. Yeah, it's 1 p.m. Welcome to the Canteen Podcast, the second least researched podcast on the internet. And that's the tagline I'm going to stick with. Oi, Team Can. Hey, how's it going, all Mike? It's actually just me, Anime Fan RK2K here. Your host, no guests, all alone. But it's St. Patrick's Day, so everyone, drink up, because we got some heavy topics. Heavy, hard-hitting, serial topics I'm going to hit. If you notice by the podcast title, I'm going to talk about what makes a good game good. Now, I will preface this by saying there's a lot to cover in that regard. And, you know, ultimately, I'm not a game maker. I'm a person who plays games. I'm a gamer, and that's it. But, you know, I figure that as a gamer, I have an opinion. So I might as well put it on the internet and get crucified in the process. So if you disagree with me, let me know. I'm okay with it. I can take a few blows, and the rest I'll just cry in my bed over later. But I'm drinking some sake. The live stream has started. Let's get into it. So it's a pretty broad thing to talk about. What makes a good game good? Because you're half Irish and you don't drink on St. Patrick's Day. Oh, that's fine. You know, half of you doesn't want to. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that works. But no, you know, just because it's St. Patrick's Day, and St. Patrick's Day, especially in America, is traditionally known for drinking, does not mean you have to drink. Putting that right there. But what makes a good game good? That is a very interesting question, and that is what I'm going to address because, you know, I figured it'd be a good topic to talk about while drinking on St. Patrick's Day. So, I think there's a lot to say. You're drunk after half a beer? Oh, that's fair. That's fair. I think there's a lot to say, so I'm going to start with, for starters, good games are good, but don't necessarily have equal standards based off of the genre of game they are. Is my first take on it. So good games are good, but not because, you know, not because they're all the same. Games are good for various reasons, and I think in different genres, games will be good because of different reasons. For example, I don't expect a platforming game that's good to be good the same way a first-person shooter game is good. To be the same as a sports game is good, or as a dance game is good, or as a cinematic game experience is good, or an RPG, etc., etc. You know, the list goes on. There's a lot of genres of game. But, you know, like, going from my earliest memories, back in the Nintendo days, essentially, when I was a kid, basically every game's good because I'm just happy to be playing video games. So, like, I was not that picky about what games are good or bad. And I think that's also a thing to talk about. So we're going to first talk about the age demographic of what makes good games good. For kids, myself as a kid included, I think we start with the basics. Was it fun to play? Was it fun to watch? Kind of thing. So, I started with the Nintendo Entertainment System as my first console. And the PC to play games on as well. And I'll say that, like, you know, for the most part, if a game captured my attention in any way, shape, or form, Mario Kart GameCube. That's a few generations past where I started. I mean, I played Mario Kart on the SNES too, though. But I think, like, you know, going from age demographic wise, if you capture a kid's attention, I think that's all you need. Catch their attention some way. You know, it's fun to play. You have a controller. You can manipulate what's on screen. You know, it's not... Games weren't... Video gaming wasn't that big. Nintendo really pulled it out of retirement. Well, out of what would have been if Atari was the end all, with the shovelware that went through that system, especially towards the end of its console life span. So, you know, that's like a good first start. Is, you know, something that's fun to play that grabs your attention, very simply. And you know, it's something that we now call gameplay. But for kids, gameplay is like, it's super simple. It's like, did I have fun playing this? They don't care about why I had fun playing this. It's I had fun playing this, therefore I enjoyed this game. But, like, you know, as adults, or the older you get, I guess, you know, you become more sophisticated about your tastes. You know, a lot of people still say that video games are for kids, and I'd like to let you know, a kid will play, like, the same level in Bugs Bunny Birthday Bash for 2 hours, bash their heads against it until they get through it, and that's not good gameplay. Now, like, is what I like to say, but then you look at the things I've done in gameplay. I'll get to that later. Yo, how's it going, Cinema? Welcome. So, you know, I think, like, age demographic is a very important thing to touch on. A lot of adults go, man, I don't like this game, but kids love it, or younger audiences love it, and it's simply, they do. It's, for them, it's fun, and that's all it is. Like, you don't have to like a game. Like, you liking a game doesn't mean someone else will also like it, and reverse. If you don't like it, it doesn't mean someone else won't like it. So, you know, age demographic for good games, or for games, are important. So that is like number one out the door. And, you know, good games are good is broad on purpose because of that. So I'm going to eliminate right off the bat on my end. Essentially, games, dude. What do you call the entire adult visual novel genre then, right? Etc. No, so like you know, there's a lot of I'm gonna say that for the most part, we're not gonna approach this from like kid gloves. This topic. So I wanted to mention that age is a very important determinator. Can be an important determination on whether someone finds a game good. Because a kid will be like, "Oh, I had fun playing it; it's good," and then, you know, they're not gonna give you a concise description of, you know, I'm not gonna go to like some 5-year-old goes, "Oh, I love playing this game." I'm like, "All right, give me a 1,000-word essay right now on 1,000 words or less. Tell me why this game was good." I'm not gonna do that to like a 5-year-old, for example, right? 8-year-old, I might go, you know, give me 500 words on it. You know, like 13-year-old, I guess 1,000. Adult, I'd be like, yo, why is your thing not published on anything but your personal blog? Maybe your opinion's not that good. Oh, no, I'm kidding, guys. But like, so you know, I'm gonna put it right here. That was my first 10-minute spiel, essentially. Is games are good for different age groups for different reasons. All right. And I don't want to touch on that too much more. I'm just saying that, you know, a game I liked as a kid, I may not like as an adult. And vice versa. Games I like as adults might not be for kids. You know. Yeah, like, for example, Battlefield 1. Not exactly a game for kids. Although, you know, if you look at Call of Duty's multiplayer, there's the notorious 12-year-olds that are swearing on Xbox Live still. You think they'd all move to Fortnite, but there's some of them are still there, actually. Some of them are still there playing COD. And the rest of the adults like, yo, Jesus, go play some Fortnite already. Come on. There's literally live streamers making millions of dollars playing this game. Why aren't you playing this too, kid? You have a lot of games that aren't for kids, Sigma? Fair. So, like, yeah, we'll move away from that. Because I want to talk about something I said specifically. Yo, you can't say screw Fortnite and it's still being one of the most popular games, okay? That just means you don't like Fortnite. There's tons of people that like Fortnite. Millions of people. You can't just say, oh, screw Fortnite. Like, Fortnite offers something to people who play it and enjoy it. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I don't play Fortnite. I have never played Fortnite. I don't have any want or inkling to play Fortnite. But I would still say Fortnite's a good game. It's very accessible. It's free. That's a pretty big plus for having people get into it. It's a free-to-play game, so to speak. And you pay for skins and stuff, I guess. I'm not entirely sure. And it, you know, it popularized the battle royale genre of gameplay. You don't like Fortnite because of the players? You know, that's like a very weird way of saying players are toxic in general. Like you're always gonna have bad eggs, and bad eggs are always the ones that stink. So you'll have a basket of eggs. If one is bad, the basket stinks. That's all it is, All Mike. Like, I'm gonna tell you that right now. Like, judge a game for its game, not for its community. How's it go? Great ideas. What's that? Great concept, terrible community. Toxic community. Like, communities, and that's gonna happen for anything that gets popularized. Because with good press, there's bad press, kind of thing. With good, with like good gameplay, good fun gameplay, there's gonna be like toxic people. No problem, Sigma. Also, remember to eat your lunch. Obviously I don't work on Sundays, but I'm drinking and doing this instead. So I do agree that you can't just eliminate it though, because at the same time, I say that a bad or toxic community, dude, there's Dr. Disrespect on PUBG, isn't there? Like, isn't his entire shtick being an asshole to people without violating the TOSs as much, if possible? I mean, at the same time, people who like we won't talk about like streamers and stuff because I will say though that for like something like Fortnite's, PUBG's, or other battle royale style games that are popular because of their battle royale style of gameplay, I will say that while I say disregard the community, I do, however, recognize that multiplayer games require you to play with other people. 100% recognize that. But at the same time, I'm gonna say like the person who's an asshole on Fortnite that played GoldenEye and was an asshole at GoldenEye is the same person, basically. So it's not like these people suddenly popped up. Fortnite is a lot more accessible, so a lot more assholes popped up. But, you know, good and bad. That's what happens when you have large communities, you know? So, that's that. But, I didn't want to skip all the way to, like modern games. Like, I want to start very basics. Going back to, you know, as kids, we play games because they are fun. And I'm saying now, for us, fun can translate to one of the main aspects of fun games, which is gameplay. I think gameplay is a very important topic to touch on and discuss, because gameplay, for me personally, I'm not sure how it is for you guys, but for me personally, gameplay determines, like, I think about 70% of what makes a game good or bad. For me personally. And let me explain. For example, you know, obviously different criteria for different genres of games. What's pay to win in Fortnite? Isn't it just skins that you buy in that game? I'm not familiar with the Fortnite model. I know that people pay for skins, and it's a game I'm not gonna touch because I play Azurlane, which is a quote unquote gacha game. Very, very, very free to play friendly. But I buy all the skins on it, so not so free to play friendly from yours truly. And so yeah, like I'm gonna go with saying that gameplay is very important. Cheaters are everywhere, okay? Like cheaters are in PUBG, cheaters are in Fortnite, cheaters are in any other battle royale that has a following of people playing. There are cheaters already in Apex Legends. Like, there's cheaters everywhere. That's gonna happen, man. I'm gonna say that, you know, game servers will get better as time passes. It'll get harder for people to cheat. And trust me, the highest performing players aren't cheaters. Like the people who win like the major Fortnite tournaments or get invited and such. They're not cheaters. You know, it's the people you play with on a regular basis that are going to get their account reported and banned consistently and constantly. Those are the cheaters. And you know what? Two different types of players. But I'm saying, and you know, that's slightly different because I believe that falls under the I feel that falls under a different category of discussion, which is more like the you know, like a gaming experience to be enjoyable for everyone, caveat. As in, everyone should play on equal footing. You know, no aim bots, no aim hacks for like first-person shooters that you play with other people, etc. At the same time, I understand that not everyone plays games that way, and I'm not gonna excuse like a person who cheats. I'm gonna say, like, that's why we call him a cheater. But you know, there's also definitely a subset of people who blame people who are good at the games for cheating as well. I'm not saying you're that. I'm just saying that in general, there's just toxic players everywhere. All right, go do groceries. But no, going back to gameplay, I think fun gameplay or gameplay is one of the biggest things that determines whether a good game is good and whether a game is not good. Like you know, gameplay could be the factor that easily determines whether it's not a good game. So, you know, I'm gonna go back to, like, you know, playing original Super Mario Brothers on the Nintendo, Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, the original Mega Man's, Legend of Zelda, etc., etc. Like, because I was an NES kid at the start. So all these games that people still play to this day are good because of solid gameplay. No one cares about the storyline of Super Mario Brothers, for example. No one's gonna be like, oh no, this had a plot twist. You had 3 Bowser fights instead of 1, or 8 Bowser fights instead of 3. Like, no one gives a shit about that. All everyone cares is, as a Mario as a standout platforming game has tight controls, or not even so tight controls, because there's definitely like glitches and stuff that you can exploit, but people care that the game is fun to play. It has tight controls. You know, it doesn't feel. Yeah, you saw gameplay of Bioshock and then you go out and play Bioshock. Exactly. Like, people play Super Mario Brothers and they go, wow, this game plays very well. The control schemes make sense. It feels good. A lot of the things that we talk about, that people who play platforms talk about, is, you know, do the controls feel tight? Do the jumps feel floaty or not? Do the button assignments make sense? You know, like things like that. And, you know, those are all very important aspects of the gameplay that makes a game fun. Like, a game can be hard. Like go play Legend of Zelda. It's a pretty hard game when you don't know what you're doing. And trust me, I didn't read manuals as a kid, so that could have also been a thing. But, like, you know, a game is hard, but it feels rewarding to go from, you know, from start to finish, from checkpoint to checkpoint. So, like, but, like, you know, overall, it starts with the gameplay. Like, you know, in the case of a Mario game, like, I want the platforming to feel tight, feel good. And, you know, it feels good to, like, overcome obstacles, jumping, moving around and jumping in it. In the case of, like, you know, very different game. Dragon Warrior, Final Fantasy, an RPG style game. You know, the combat system the turn-based combat system feels really good. The progression feels very natural or smooth or streamlined. That's a part of the gameplay aspects of it. You know, like, you don't, like, you know, you're not grinding in the same place for 10 hours to get to, like, the very next dungeon. Like, you know, that feels very, you feel very cheated. You feel like, wow, that seems stupid. Why should I do that, etc. As opposed to, you know, so natural progression is important. In the case of, like, you know, going later on, kart racing games, you know, I want the controls to feel very smooth when I turn and stuff, you know, and, you know, like, aesthetics are very important as well, but mostly it's how the kart controls, how the player controls, how the combat system controls. In first-person shooters, how the controls are, you know, like looking around, aiming and everything, how they feel, how they control. Your brother was stuck in the water temple of Ocarina of Time for a few months on the GameCube. The GameCube version of it, yeah. It's the same, which is the same as the N64 version. And you had to borrow a guidebook. Yeah. So, like, controls are very, in my opinion, very important in determining, like, whether a game is good or not. For example, even in more recent days, I've been playing Let's Go Pikachu, Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. Game feels very tight, controls very well, in my opinion. I don't know about other people's, but for the most part, a lot of my IRL friends have said the same thing. Gameplay feels very good. Like, even though you requires a Joy-Con and you like swinging your arm around, feels very good. Celeste, a game I played, amazing, controls amazingly well. Hard as balls platformer. I died over 2,000 times doing the A and B sides of it. But felt very rewarding. Controlled very tight, in my opinion. Although one of my controllers died. I was playing it because of age, and I had to use a backup controller instead. But that's beside the point. That's hardware issues on my end, not the game's fault. The game felt very, the game controlled very well. Octopath Traveler, I'm playing it on my Switch. The turn-based combat system, it plays very well. It controls very well. A lot of the menus and stuff make sense. And like the interactivity I have with the world from a gameplay standpoint is very nice. Where like each of the characters have their own special techniques. that you can interact with you can interact or influence the world in some way, shape, or form. I tweeted like yesterday, even like no, today actually, no, yesterday, that like literally I have robbed an entire city blind, but that's besides the point in that game. You know, and then going to like other games like your Metroidvanias, you know, the feeling, the collection and process and stuff, it progresses very well. That's good gameplay design. You know, Sonic the Hedgehog, the fact that like the way you moved around and stuff felt very fluid on the Sega Genesis. That's good gameplay design. So like, you know, like gameplay is a very big thing. I think I would define gameplay as such. I define it as essentially the player's input into the game. You know, so that's you moving around on maps. That's you platforming. That's you, you know, that's you making making decisions and such, like choices in terms of things like that. I think your input into the game, no matter how big or how small, because like let's put it this way: what's the gameplay for a visual novel in comparison? It's like, well, there is no real gameplay. You go through, you read, you make choices, and that's a very different experience. And I'll get to that, but you know, I'm gonna say 70% of a game's of what makes a game good is definitely their gameplay, and that's what the player can do to interact with or directly input into the game. And that's usually via a controller, sometimes other ways, you know. But you know, that is important. Obviously, there are some shining examples. I gave you the Mario franchise, or 2D Sonic franchise, Mega Man franchise, for the most part. You know, Final Fantasies, Dragon Quest, like you name it. There's tons of games out there. Indie titles such as Celeste, Binding of Isaac. What others? I've been playing Remulor. It's a lot of fun to play. Very tight, responsive controls. So you know, first-person shooter genre, like the original Halo trilogy, was a lot of fun to play for me, etc. Borderlands 2, especially, I felt did it right. You know, obviously, and there's other games like there's puzzle games that do it well. Tetris is a great example of a game that has outlived its initial release many times over now. You know, Portal's an amazing first-person shooter puzzle, essentially, with the portal gun. You know, a lot of the Legend of Zelda games translated very well into 3D world, to 3D space with their adventure puzzle aspects. So, like, you know, there's a lot of examples of good games that do it well. And then there's examples of games that don't do it so well. Like, you know, let's talk about... I don't play that many bad games anymore, so, like, it's a little bit harder for me. But, like, for example, like, the original Ninja Turtles was balls hard. Sometimes unfairly so. Bugs Bunny's Birthday Bash, any old NES game, also example. I said before, like, you know, it took me 2 hours to get through like a part of a level, and I was a little kid, so I was too invested to not get through it. So I did, but like I hit my head against it until I did. Original Metroid. I'll be the first. I'll be one of the ones to say it. Compared to Nintendo Metroid to Super Metroid on the Super Nintendo, light and day. Original Metroid had some of the makings of what makes a Metroid good, but I think future installments have definitely improved on that tremendously. And obviously, like within a franchise, you can have big leaps and bounds. Look at the original Super Mario Brothers and Lost Levels, and then look at Super Mario Brothers 3. Night and day. Very different gameplay. Pokemon evolved tremendously from its original red-blue origins to what we got now. Like, look at Pokemon Red and Blue and look at its second remakes of Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. So it's amazing how far the game has come. terms of graphics, in terms of, you know, in terms of things I haven't talked about, but especially in terms of gameplay. The gameplay feels a lot more streamlined, running a little bit faster, having the option to kind of run around the world. Even, you know, physically, you know, moving around your Joy-Con or your little Pokeball Go thing to catch Pokemon. So, very nice in that regard. So yeah, like, yeah, that gameplay is definitely the big one that I wanted to talk about. I'm talking about because of that. And definitely, if games weren't fun to play in the first place, like, there are some people that definitely would have beaten the game because they wanted to beat it, because they were like, I don't want to lose to this, whatever it is. But, you know, I'm gonna say for the most part, if a game is fun to play, that's gonna give people incentives to beat it right there. So, and gameplay is gonna have different mileage based off the genre of game. For example, my visual novels, I don't expect anything other than a good choose an option gameplay experience. But if my platformers don't have responsive controls and movements, we got a problem with that. So, gameplay is like 70% of it. I'm gonna say that 70% is caveated with genre. Like, obviously, some genres will have much more need of that than others. So, now moving on to something, the next thing that I think determines good games is going to be, this one I think is more important than any of the other topics I'm going to choose, other than gameplay. Music, sound, not story, not art, music and sound. If you put two blocks into a game and it sounded great, people will still want to play it, is what I'm saying. People don't care about the graphics. We're in a renaissance of pixel graphics again. Like, we're in a, like, you know, whatever. Like, you can have computer graphics that, with enough time, look almost as real people to a scary degree. But you make a good pixel graphic game with excellent music, people are like, yo, I want to play that one. And, you know, this is gonna hold weight for basically for almost every game that exists, period. Whether that is a dancing game, whether that's some form of puzzle game, whether that's a platformer, whether that's a story-driven game, whether that's all of it. Music is very key. Music is like a 50%, and I know that these percentages aren't going to add up, so, you know, you guys will have to cut down my percentages on your own. But, you know, I'm like halfway through a bottle of sake, so I'm purposely giving you bullshit numbers. So, I would apologize, but I am doing it on purpose, so I'm not sorry. But anyway, music is like 50% of your of the game. Music is very determinant on the mood and emotions you as the player should feel, much more so than the story. Much more, like, gameplay might make you angry, but there's a difference between, like, oh man, I'm pissed, or oh man, I'm adrenaline up to want to overcome this. And sometimes, you know, sometimes a good song is the difference between you going, fuck this shit, I don't want to do this, or yo, I'm gonna do this. My personal biggest example of that is, and this is spoilers for Undertale, so if you want to, like, stay away for like the next 5 minutes, I'm giving you a fair warning right now, but this is spoilers for Undertale. In the genocide route, you fight Sans, and that fight took me 9 hours straight to finally beat. And the only reason I did it was because literally I would have probably thrown my controller and given up 3 hours in if it wasn't for the fact that the background song was Megalovania. That one song alone kept me going until I finally overcame the fight at like 9 hours, almost literally like just over 9 hour mark. And that's saying a lot about music and sound, because that song got me pumped. Like, first of all, I didn't even get pissed after the first hour to 2 hours. I was like, wow, this is a hard boss fight. Like 3 hours in, I was like, wow, this is a really hard boss fight. Like, I definitely was like getting a lot more angrier about it. Like four hours in, I was like, oh my god, what the fuck. But no, if that song wasn't as good as it was, I wouldn't have beaten it. I would have been like, boop, done. Like, boop, up, given up, done. Like, probably 3 hours in. But, and that's why music is very important. It sets the mood. Like, that song got me pumping. It got me going, alright, I'm gonna do this. This song is really good. Like, the beats are great. It gets you into a mood, a mindset. And that's what music should do. Like, a game franchise that I don't touch on much is Dark Souls, because I haven't played it. But Dark Souls boss fights and Dark Souls as a whole offers a very great package in terms of sound and music. Some of those boss fights in some of those boss battles are amazing. What they can make you feel in those moments. And Dark Souls specifically, a lot of the bosses' attack patterns are based around the beats of the music. If you don't know this, I watched a video on it. It's really cool. But attacks come in like the beats and rhythms. There's a rhythm to it and a beat to it, and the music happens to match up pretty well with that. So I think that's really cool. And like rhythm games, like 100%, like any type of rhythm game, it's all about matching those beats. Dark Souls is the game that got your friends to rage. Yeah, Dark Souls is a game that requires a lot of patience and not going the wrong way. But yeah, like rhythm games is all music. Like the music is like, if a rhythm game didn't have music, you don't have a rhythm game. You have a QuickTime event, a really shitty silent QuickTime event. And so that's why music and sounds are very important. What's called a lot of like first-person shooters. If you didn't have like the sound effects from like the guns, and even like NPC shouting as you're going through it in story campaigns and stuff, like, it would take away from the gameplay experience. You wouldn't have it. Voice acting, very important. That is a part of the sound and the music side of gaming. Like, voice acting, or lack thereof in some cases, plays a very pivotal or key role. Like, there's a ton of people, and obviously as a person who plays Neptunia, ton of people sold on the voice acting of the Neptunia franchise, when there is. Come on, Compiler Idea Factory. Keep that budget strong. Keep those scenes voice acted in English for those who like it. So like, that's a game series that a ton of people are sold on the voice acting alone and the music. Valhalla, a visual novel game I played. Amazing visual novel game. Literally, and the music sets the tone so well. Music's really good in that one. And this goes all the way back to NES days with like, and Atari days even, with like the blips and beeps. Obviously, who doesn't recognize the original Super Mario Brothers? No, like almost everyone does. Like original Sonic the Hedgehog, the Green Hill Zone. You'll hear that 50 billion times. About, yeah, I know that's it. If you've ever played Sonic the Hedgehog, you're like, yeah, I know that song. Green Hill Zone. Like you recognize it right away. So music and sound, very important in determining the moods and tones of a game, and will invest you into it more than the story will, more than, in some cases like a rhythm game and stuff, more than the gameplay will. There definitely been times when I went, oh my god, this beat is really hot, really good, and I've enjoyed a scene more or joined a moment more than if they didn't have it, or they had like generic music, So like and you know, so like, you know, you can't ignore that. Like, that is a very strong thing that is very easy to convey to your players, because, you know, a lot of players who play. Case you're a long one tonight, Code. All right, that's fair. Yeah. Oh, Kingdom Hearts as well. Music sets the tone in a lot of places. Like, you know, there's a lot of great music in like Dragon Quest, like RPGs or cinematic games or visual novels. All the good ones, anyway, have great music and great sounds. And that's the reason why. You want to sell somebody on the storyline, you want to sell somebody on the mood or tones. Music, sound. Can't stress it enough. They will sell you on it. Metal Gear Solid 4 is not excellent gameplay. It's an excellent cinematic experience. The music sets it. The final boss fight. Yeah, there you go, Code. Yeah, half the games you play have music you fucking love. Yeah, Code, I was also saying just before that Undertale, my Undertale fight, the boss fight, it's in 9 hours. Megalovania sells that fight for me. It's the reason why I actually kept at it for that long. It's like the final boss fight in Metal Gear Solid 4 is fucking amazing because of music. Like, the gameplay is meh. It's alright. Like, it's not terrible, but you know, it's not optimized for that final boss fight. But that music, that song that they play at the end is so good. The one where I think they switched through the different themes of Metal Gear Solid for it too. It's really good. Like, every time you boot up like a Dragon Quest game and you hear that opening jingle, you go, oh yeah, we're playing some Dragon Quest. Final Fantasy, same thing. You hear the few notes of like the traditional Final Fantasy theme song. You're like, oh yeah, we're playing Final Fantasy, and that's true for like a lot of long-standing franchises. What's called Donkey Kong Country franchise back in the Super NES, and Rare in general has some great music for a lot of their games. GoldenEye, back in the day. After they got acquired by Microsoft, it's been kind of bad. But like, you know, like GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, Donkey Kong, like they were all sold. You had sold so quickly on the music alone. Like, the music is amazing, and that's why I say music and sound effects is important. Prelude, the Final Fantasy Prelude. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, like yeah, that's gonna be like 50%. 70% gameplay, 50% music and sound, right there. And now we're gonna hit another one that I would consider like the 30%er, maybe the 25%er even. Story. And I ranked this a lot lower than the others, but I'm going to give a caveat on it at the end of this. So I'm going to say 25% story. And the reason why story is less than music and sound and less than gameplay is, first of all, I think video games are meant to be played. Obviously, as a person who plays a lot of visual novel games, that sounds contradictory. Because like, hey, I play visual novels twice a week. And I go, yeah, I get it, guys. Yeah, I play visual novels and I fucking love them. But, I think gameplay is number one. Gameplay is number one, and music sound is number two, because story is good, but not every game survives on its story alone. Like, for example, it's hard for me to give examples of that, because a lot of great stories also complement itself with passable, if not great, gameplay. And great music and sound. I'm gonna bring up one of my favorite RPGs of all time, Chrono Trigger. And Chrono Trigger sells itself alone on its it could sell itself alone on gameplay and on music and sound. But the story is also really good. All right, see you, Sigma. But yeah, so you know, like this one's a little bit tougher for me to like really pinpoint well, and I apologize for that. Actually, you know what? I'll bring up my favorite game. My favorite game of all time is Final Fantasy Tactics on the original Sony PlayStation, or to remake the War of the Lions on the PSP. That game is a tactical RPG. You know, not necessarily the best gameplay. It has some really good music, as do like most Final Fantasy games actually. But it really sells itself, in my opinion, on the storyline. So like it's all about like political intrigue, and it sells itself really on storyline and characters, as memorable characters in many cases, especially for your main cast. And it has a very intriguing politically based storyline of like royal family politics and stuff. And I think that's a very good example of something that sells itself with its story. I'm also considering characters separate than storyline, because I think that characters are a different beast. Because you can have a storyline with generic characters, you might forget the characters, but you'll remember the story will stick with you. And vice versa. You can have a game that had like generic everything else, but you remember the characters in it. And it's actually very important, because in gaming we have what's called story-driven and character-driven. And you know, having a character-driven story is good, and having a story-driven game is good, but having both is better, or can be better. But we're specifically sticking on the story. I think story is important, and the reason I rank it lower is because there are definitely games that have good story, but because the other aspects fall short, people are like, not gonna play it. Great story, didn't really like the music, didn't like the gameplay that much, I'm not playing it. And that's it, it's done. And that's why I rank it lower than gameplay, I rank it lower than music. There are definitely people who have played games just for music alone. There are definitely people who play games because the gameplay is good and didn't care about anything else in it. Story is hit or miss. I mean, story is definitely hit or miss in comparison. But story is a very important part. As a person who plays visual novels, I think story is very good. I think story can sell me, and it can sell a lot of people on justifying to play a game. Like I said, Final Fantasy Tactics. Definitely one of the things that really sells it is its storyline. A lot of visual novels that are worth playing. The story really drives the point home. And you know, story can build a character. God of War franchise, for example. I think the latest installment of God of War 4, which I think is just called God of War, right? It sells itself for the fact that it came after the other three, and I think that story build up makes it a excellent entry into the God of War franchise, and also because it purposely distances itself away from the first three by going, hey, we've melded out Kratos a little bit. Here's some more. Here's his son. Here's his boy. And like the story really sells it. It's why I won Game of the Year, I think, in some awards for a lot of people. I think Persona 5 is another game. Sells itself on story. It sells itself on music too. I don't know. Like the music and the gameplay and the characters are all great in that one. So that may not be as good of an example, but the storyline definitely, it flows very well, in my opinion, on that one. Whereas, like, you know, like one of my other favorite games of that same year, Breath of the Wild, all gameplay and music, baby. Oh, music / sound, I'd say. The storyline, they did better on the storyline than I anticipated, but that's not saying much. I think they really did best on characters, especially with the DLC, Breath of the Wild, but, you know, it falls under Persona 5, because if you need DLC to flesh out some of your champions to improve that portion of it, I mean, it's nice, but at the same time, you know, that's why I rank Persona 5 over Breath of the Wild. Oh, Doki Doki Literature Club, though, in comparison, definitely sells itself on story. Like, definitely the music, it sounds like later on in the game. It's a visual novel game, guys. Later on in the game, kind of have a big influence. But the gameplay is kind of lackluster, as in it doesn't really exist. The best parts are when you pick 20 random words for your quote-unquote poems you're writing. And I'm just like, yeah, who the hell is actually writing poems like this? So, that's a thing. But, like, definitely it sells itself on the story. And you know what? Even more so than characters in that game. Like, I think the characters could have been whoever. I think one character sells herself very well. Or two characters do. And, like, the other two happen to be in there. Like, I enjoyed it, but, you know. But that one's definitely a story-driven game. And, yeah, and, you know, those are things where story is key. Valhalla, another visual novel. And it's going to be a lot of, like, games that step away from the gameplay aspects of it. Like, they sell themselves on music, on story, on characters, usually. That step away from the gameplay aspects. Valhalla, Cyberpunk Bartender Action, definitely has a very interesting flow of story and characters that makes it work. A lot of RPGs, actually, I think, do that, where they focus more on the story. It's kind of like the journey for the characters. That's the main focus. So the story really sells itself. Star Ocean 2, from my remembrance, does it pretty well. You know, despite everybody's complaints about Final Fantasy VII being like what it is, I think Final Fantasy VII definitely has a cast of characters that sells itself well, as it does a pretty interesting story, as it does a pretty good soundtrack. But gameplay-wise, you know, even gameplay-wise, I think it does something. It does quite a few things right. To like go into that 3D-esque world. Although everyone will remember the game for Popeye Arms, which is fine. I'm okay with that, to being something everyone remembers. So yeah, story. Not as important as gameplay and music and sound, but definitely something that can sell a game. And there's an entire genre called visual novels that survives off of the fact that it's not about the gameplay necessarily. There's definitely a lot of cinematic games such as Metal Gear Solid 4 that go, it's not about the gameplay necessarily. So yeah, that's why I think story is lower than gameplay and music and sound, but is still a big contender. And the other one, also at 25% of what makes a game good, is characters. Characters will sell a game as well. I would say Hyperdimension Neptunia, for example, the Neptunia franchise as a whole, sells itself well on its characters. I think a lot of the popularity is from the fact that we enjoy the characters. It's, you know, it's not like it has standout JRPG elements. It's like, it feels pretty standard JRPG-ish. The stories are kind of like lackluster at best in some of the installments, but it's definitely the characters that sell it. Like, everyone talks about their favorite characters, their favorite Nep waifus, etc. So characters will sell a game. I mean, you know, with that said, like, I enjoy the music and stuff too, but, you know. But it's okay gameplay, decent music, characters. That clickbait is beautiful. Thank you. I think so too. But yeah, no, characters are definitely like 25% what makes a game good. So yeah, it's definitely high up there. There are plenty of games where characters sell it. Undertale has interesting gameplay, has decent music, has a story that's especially going past the run, it definitely has a story worth exploring. But its characters really make it stand out. Like all really great, lovable characters. And vice versa. Games that make a character like, especially a villain, like worth hating, also doing an excellent job with characters. Just trying to think of a few like off the top of my head. Can't really think of any. All right, have fun finding pudding, Nep. Why can't I think of like a good villain? I guess the Persona franchise does a really good job of plot twist villains you don't mind going, yeah, I hate that guy. In that regard. Final Fantasy VII actually does a really good job of portraying, yeah, I'm gonna be the end final boss in the form of Sephiroth. Great characterization moments for that. And Sephiroth also is rendered, like, I think slightly better than some of your other party members, so he doesn't look like Popeye arms. It could just, is that a coincidence or is that intentional game design? Characterization. But yeah, characters definitely can sell a game as well. Going back to like Doki Doki Literature Club even. Like the characters in it are pretty interesting. The playable character is kind of meh, but you kind of try to control him, so it's kind of whatevs. Persona 5 though, definitely like any game that people are arguing about who their favorite character is and why, like it shows that there's a lot of people passionate about the characters in the game. Whether that be Persona 5, whether that be Neptunia, or even whether that be you know, Undertale. Like there's like definitely very big on characters, all of those. Obviously those aren't the only examples. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head. But you know, and that's why characters are important. Like I wouldn't have liked Final Fantasy Tactics, for example, as my favorite game of all time if it wasn't the fact that it had a good combination of characters and storyline. The characters are very interesting in it, in my opinion. You know, they might not do as much with them later on, but in War of the Lions, they do kind of fix that by having extra cutscenes and stuff with said characters involved. The Neptunia franchise as a whole, I think, stands out with its quirky cast of characters, and I really appreciate that because that's the reason why I enjoy it a lot. Because to be frank, I don't think Compile Heart Idea Factory does a great job in telling a story. Or even if they do, then they make a V2R version of it and they ruin it anyway. Thanks, Compile Heart Idea Factory. I live streamed that game though, so I still bought the game, but whatever. Like, characters can definitely sell a game. I know from a visual novel aspect, one that stands out to me that's kind of old now is the Capo visual novel. Because the story is kind of all sorts of lackluster. It's literally the characters themselves that sell themselves. It's a character-driven piece, and you know that's why people say character-driven story or character-driven piece, because it's driven by the characters, it's not story-driven. It's character-driven. You know, characters are the driving force or motivation for people to keep playing, and for whatever is happening to happen. And that's a good thing, you know? Like, it's good. Like, even back in the days, like Chrono Trigger, like the characters are in that one are a lot of fun. Very good. They stand out to me, nostalgically so. So yeah, characters are very important. So let's see. Now we have gameplay, we have music and sound, we have a story, and we have characters. Our four main things that make a good game good. So now let's talk about how good games take those aspects and merge them together well. And this one's gonna be now kind of like my personal takes on what good games are, what some good or great games are, and why they're good and why they're great. And if you have any that you want to chip in, like, yo, feel free to. Either now live while I'm live streaming this, or chip in the comments afterwards, like why you think a game is good, or why you think the particular game you want to talk about is good. So obviously, one of the ones I want to talk about is my favorite game of all time, which is Final Fantasy Tactics, and I think that is an excellent example of something that is not everything is perfect. It wouldn't get a perfect score across the board. I would not give it a perfect score for gameplay. Tactics or strategy RPGs in general are they're like at best mediocre at times, at worst absolutely horrible to control, wonky camera angles. Final Fantasy Tactics has some weird camera angles, it's true, but for the most part it handles itself pretty well. I'd say it's passable in gameplay. It's not that exciting. There's a lot more preparation prior to or before you go into a battle than you think. That'll be a better determining factor for that kind of thing. But definitely when it comes to the music and sound, the music always feels very epic and very fitting for all the scenes that they have. Has a lot of good cutscenes too. Makes it very good story driven. And you got a very interesting cast of characters that is also customizable. And I appreciate that fact, that you can customize your characters the way you see fit. And also have them play an important or integral role in the story because of their personalities. And obviously this is going to be like the section that has a lot more spoilers now. Because I'm going to talk about like specific things about it. But like one of my favorite characters in the game is Zalbag Beowulf, because he's literally the definition of lawful good or lawful anal for you D&D fans. Basically someone who's on an unerring side of I am on the side of justice type. And he is the main character's older half brother. Not the eldest older half brother, but he is an older half brother. He is the equivalent of like a general of the armies for his family. And he will sacrifice the common man if he means like the benefit of the whole kingdom, in his opinion. Which also means he gets tricked because he's also a man of action. Like he finds out that the eldest brother poisoned their father to take over the position of power earlier. And the moment Zalbag finds that out, Zalbag's like, alright, I'm killing eldest brother. And so your main character, Ransom Beowulf, you go to the Beowulf castle and find Zalbag in the middle of a rampage going, yes, our eldest brother poisoned and killed our father. He must be slain now. Because he is lawful good. It's like, you have done evil, therefore you must now be blotted out. Kind of type. Very interesting character. And he looks at it from like a big picture perspective. Never looks at it from the little man's perspective, or like oh yeah, but what about this person that was affected by your actions? He goes, what about that person? He saved the kingdom, kind of thing. Well, I think that's very interesting that characters can have that much personality, and thus like events in the story are literally affected by their actions. Such as the fact that Zalbag storms his own home to slay their eldest brother. So that's an example of a game Final Fantasy Tactics in general that has a lot of those situations. Augury's Oaks being my favorite character from that game, because her unerring loyalty to the throne or to the crown princess, even though she may be a fake, like, is commendable in many ways. Undertale, I give it a lot of shit because I would consider Undertale an incomplete experience in my opinion. You go for the pacifist and genocide endings. So I'm actually just going to touch on the pacifist ending, which is kind of dumb. A lot of people, and this is what a lot of people do anyway, but you have to give credit where credit's due. It has excellent music. It has a very interesting gameplay mechanics in its form of attack patterns in the RPG, in like the little box that your heart is constrained in. It has great characters. And it tells an interesting story that you find out more and more as you go through it. And the pacifist route is really cool because it offers you like, you know, the fact that you can fight but not actually fight enemies. I thought was really cool. That you can find a way to almost every ending in the game except one, I want to say, or two. You can find a way to spare, essentially, which is like you let them go, let them live their lives. Then the biggest one that you can't do it to is the Asgore fight, King Asgore, the end of the pacifist route. If you're playing for the first time, there is no pacifist route. You have to go into that fight, and he destroys your flee button, so you can't escape the battle, and you are forced to fight him to basically death. And even if you don't kill him, someone else does, and then you have to face the repercussions, which is a lot of fun. Involves a game crash, involves you fighting Photoshop lobby. Good times. But no, that's a game that has excellent music, excellent gameplay, excellent characters, excellent storyline in that regard. The fact that you have to take that forced loss, and then you load back up your game and you can get the pacifist ending proper, I thought was really cool. And Code was laughing like a maniac because he then let me know that I had to get a normal ending before I can get the pacifist ending. I was like, alright, that's cool. Luckily I didn't mess it up, so I can go immediately for the pacifist ending right after that. What else? I give a lot of flack to the Neptunia franchise for a lot of things, but definitely when it comes to there are definitely some standout entries in it. I think Mega Dimension Neptunia V2 is an excellent game. It has 3 endings, which were taken out in V2R, which I thought was dumb. It has Uzume Tenoboshi, an excellent character in her own right. And they reveal like who she is throughout the game. The main villain reveal is pretty cool, although everyone kind of should have expected it, especially if you listen to it in English, because the Japanese voice actress did a much better job of masking her voice when she was playing the villain as well, because you find out the villain is Uzume as well. But they give her the Neptunes give her a weird name, Kurama Ankokuboshi, which is supposed to be the reverse of Uzume Tenoboshi, whatever. Japanese jokes. Doesn't translate well. But you know, with that said, you know that the music is good. The gameplay was pretty good. The story has actually flowed very well from like start to finish, in my opinion. And the fact that you have the 3 separate endings, which I thought was really interesting, that you could have 3 separate endings. The bad endings just kind of whatevs, like bad endings easily achieved because you literally purposely like fail to do like the last things you can do in the game to like avoid the bad ending, avoid the normal ending even. Let's say. And then you could go immediately to bad ending by doing that. And then they have the normal and true endings, which the normal ending is very interesting because it tells us itself very well. And true ending is very interesting because the normal ending is kind of like the story-driven ending, and it ends on a slightly melancholic but a hopeful note on Planitude hopefully becoming a better nation because of it. And then the true ending is completely character-driven because literally that involves Neptune, the main character, going, "No, we're gonna get a true ending. We're gonna get an ending where everyone survives and everyone's smiling together," and that's what happens. So I thought that was really cool. Yes, podcast again. Hey, I haven't podcasted in 2 weeks. Okay, I'm gonna probably podcast once a month, Vanitas. Not gonna lie. So no, I'm just going through spoilers because I'm talking about what games I find good personally. So I'm talking about V2R now. V2R now. I just talked about Undertale and Final Fantasy Tactics. So yeah, like so in that regard, I think Neptunia V2 definitely did a great job of giving you a story-driven ending that's the normal ending, and a character-driven ending that is the true ending. And I think in that regard it did its job very well. Whereas I think the V2R, by taking out the multiple endings. How far am I in the Guda Guda event? I'm basically like 60% done with it. So like I made a good chunk in that. Fake Go related, guys. Sorry for that. Another good game in my opinion is just to kind of jump around a little bit. I think I already talked about Chrono Trigger, but should I bring that up again? How many points do I have? I don't know, a few 100,000, something like that. I could talk about Chrono Trigger. You know what? Instead of Chrono Trigger, let's talk about Earthbound. Earthbound is a game with a lot of personality. It has interesting gameplay mechanics that differ from your standard JRPG or standard RPG. It has amazing and interesting music and sound. The characters are wild, great, as well as the story. The story's very interesting on what it's trying to tell you. That is a standout RPG. And back in the day, it wasn't known by that many people. Now everyone's like, oh yeah, we've heard of Earthbound. Earthbound is a standout RPG game. Role-playing game. In that regard. And it literally it hits all aspects. It has interesting new different game mechanics that differ from other entries in RPGs. Has a very interesting music and sound score. And it has excellent storyline and excellent characters. And people still beg for Mother 3 until the cows come home, until the end of days, because Mother 3 does even better, in my opinion. I'm not gonna lie, like Mother 3 definitely gets characters done even better, makes it much more heartfelt, and the story is also much more heartfelt, which I think is very cool. So I'm gonna say Earthbound, the Mother franchise. I wouldn't say Mother 1, but definitely Earthbound and Mother 3 are the two that you should totally play if you haven't. Going back to old NES games, man, I'm gonna say like Super Mario, the Super Mario Brothers franchise, Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3. I'm gonna say specifically the first of many platform games, Super Mario Brothers. It's so good. It has very concise levels, checkpoints yourself at very good places. A lot of fun to play. Simple yet effective controls. Super Mario Brothers 3 is like all that plus better graphics, better music, more things. Like has an overworld you can travel around. Has branching paths because of that. You purposely choose to skip levels and not go through all of them. It's that, like, they are definitely two of the best platformers ever in history. They're not and you know what? They're not even necessarily my favorite or the best in the Mario franchise, but they're definitely the two that I want to say are ones that stand out. Definitely above and beyond the good game. The great or excellent games, really, for those. And Super Mario Brothers and Super Mario Brothers 3 both have excellent gameplay mechanics, excellent music and sound. And you know what? Not really story or character driven. And they're still great games because, you know, you don't need those necessarily. I said you don't need those necessarily. But on the flip side, I'm going to talk about Valhalla Cyberpunk Bartender Action, which actually has an interesting gameplay mechanic of serving alcohol. So because you play as Jill the bartender at the Valhalla bar. And you have the interesting mechanic of mixing and serving alcoholic beverages. So I thought that was really cool. But at the same time, you also have, you know, you have a ton of interesting characters that go through it. And it's like, wow. These characters are all very interesting. Music is great. Storyline wise, it feels very like, you know, it feels like you're meeting these patrons and they're telling their stories. So it's more, I'd say it's more character driven, because like all you are is you're a bartender. That's the entire premise of the game. You're a bartender. You have some shit on your plate, emotionally. But other than that, like, you're basically just playing this game, and you're basically just working your job and then meeting people, and it's really cool because it's like you are playing that bartender, the wise if not very sarcastic Jill, who mixes drinks and saves lives, as she puts it. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, I thought that was really awesome. Actually, it was a lot of fun. So that's the thing. What other games? What games? I've been drinking like pretty heavily for an hour now. I drank all of my entire bottle of sake already, so that gives you an indication of how my day is going so far. St. Patrick's Day. Let's see. Let's talk about games I've recently played and or beaten. The Fruit of Grisaia. I want to talk about it because I like my visual novel games, and that game is amazing. Like, the story combination with characters, so good. Music's alright. I would say alright, if not pretty good. But the story and the characters really drive that game, which is good for a visual novel in my opinion. But so that's the thing. That one has like five. Basically, you go to a high school of 6 students. You being one of the 6 because you just transferred in, and you know it's 5 female students, and you know it's like, oh well, that sounds like every harem protagonist's dream, right? No, it's essentially everyone has their own circumstances on why they're there. Because it's not a school for people who are normally functioning adults in society. It's for children who have had problems dealing with normal functioning society that are now attending this school. Very interesting because of that. And yeah, you get to know like everybody. You get to know, and like there's an extensive period of you essentially getting to know everybody, getting to know your position in the school alongside everyone, getting along with everybody. There's a ton of build up before you have to decide to go down one of the 5 routes in the Fruit of Grisaia. It's very good, very enjoyable, a lot of fun. So that's pretty cool. I think I already touched on Doki Doki Literature Club. It's another free-to-play game, so if you haven't played it and you haven't spoiled yourself on the story plots and twists, like, I will warn you and preface it by saying the game is for mature audiences because it'll give you the warning like itself, but it's a very good and it's free. And you know what? I'm gonna round this off with like, let's talk about Breath of the Wild and let's talk about Persona 5 because that's my 2017 game list in a nutshell of my top 3: Tokyo Literature Club, Persona 5, and Breath of the Wild. I'm gonna talk about Breath of the Wild first. Breath of the Wild is beautiful. I know I didn't talk about visuals and graphics, but personally, I'm gonna tell you this right now: visuals and graphics are so little of what makes a good game good that there's no point talking about it. People still play Minecraft. People still are playing Minecraft, and Minecraft is just like pixel bricks, essentially. So, graphics mean nothing. Music and sound, story, characters, gameplay, those are the key things. That's a big 4. Graphics doesn't even get onto that big 4. So, Breath of the Wild, example of excellent, fun gameplay. It is so fun to waltz into the world and go, wow, that thing is huge. And I realized, wait, I will be able to fully explore this huge world with enough time. And you do. If you so choose to, you do. And it's amazing. The music and sounds are very mellow. They're very like out of your face. I think they did a very good job in that regard, which is very interesting because like other games like Link to the Past, which is my favorite Legend of Zelda game, has an excellent soundtrack. But on the flip side, Breath of the Wild has voice acting, and the voice acting is spot on. Spot on. It's so good. In the case of the characters, I think all the characters are a treat. It's definitely a world that, even though it's on the brink of Ganon may return and wreck everything up, it's definitely a world that's inhabited and feels relatively alive. So I thought that was pretty cool. Story-wise, like, you know, it's your standard, you know, go fight Ganon, save the princess type of story. So it doesn't really stand out, but the fact that you can do that from the get-go, even though it's impossible unless you learn how to do strats and stuff, you could just go straight and fight Ganon and beat the game if you want to. Or you can explore the entirety of Hyrule, becoming more powerful in the process, and then fight Ganon once you're good and ready. And you defeated 4 divine beasts and such, and gotten your Master Sword. Maybe you're gonna get your Hylian Shield too, etc. So, I thought that was really cool. That's a very interesting gameplay mechanic. The fact that you can fight Ganon like right off the bat after you finish essentially the tutorial plateau, and then, or you can fight him like at the very end of your adventure after you've done everything else. Excellent gameplay. Story-wise, like the memories, I think served a much-needed kind of break of just exploration, occasional shrine, exploration. Like, I thought finding the memories was an excellent way of telling the story the way it did. I thought, yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it gave a lot of character to Princess Zelda, of all people, who you wouldn't really expect you would want to really need more character from. But like, I think like a game like Ocarina of Time, definitely Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker has shown, like, giving some sort of a character to your Princess Zelda makes it a much bigger investment to want to save her in the end, from whatever happened that made it so that you have to save her in some of those cases. So I think Breath of the Wild did that very well with the memories in that one. Now Persona 5 is just fucking phenomenal, like, in comparison. Like, that thing is just, oh my god, the game is so fun to play. The combat is super streamlined now. Like, it's so good. The combat is super streamlined. The confidants, your party members are a riot. They're so great. The villains are so hateable in it too. It's really nice. Like, it does so many things right. The story paces itself very well. I never at any time felt that the story's pace was like too fast or too slow. Unless I missed something very vital to my progress. I was like, I fucked up. But that's my fault. So, you know, that's not the game's fault. That's me. For missing like deadlines that I did. For some things because I was too busy dicking around doing other things and enjoying myself and having a great time. So, yeah. Sorry, me, for being me. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed Persona 5 because of that. It's a full package presentation. Excellent, I would say even. And visually, stunning. Yo, like, I think graphics are a plus. And the majority of the games I mentioned, Super Mario Brothers, very good for an NES game. Super Mario Brothers 3, gorgeous for an NES game. Chrono Trigger, excellent looking game. Earthbound and Mother 3, also both excellent looking, for what they are, excellent games that do its graphics justice, in my opinion. Breath of the Wild is visually stunning. Persona 5 is so stylish. It's so beautiful. Doki Doki Lyrics Club, cute, gets it through. As does the Fruit of Grisaia. Fruit of Grisaia has some funny, joke cut-ins though that make it even funnier. So that's a big plus in the terms of visuals. And Undertale, I think Undertale did pixel graphics very well as well. Like each character is bursting with personality in their character design in that game too. So, like, visuals are a nice plus, but basically any game that is good enough, either character-wise or story-wise, or music sound-wise, or gameplay-wise, will probably have one of the other major topics, if not visuals, to back it up. And you know, that's all. I'm now a full bottle of sake down. I'm feeling a little bit tipsy, and I'm not sure how much more coherent thought you're gonna get, because this entire podcast has not been coherent thought. But I will say that what makes a good game good? Really, you know, if you decide it's good, it's a good game for you anyway. Like, that's all I can really say. The takeaway from all this is I'm just full of shit, and really what makes a good game good is because you enjoy it and you think it's good. It might not be good for everybody, but it's good for you, and that's all that really matters. So this Anime Fan Arcade 2K, thank you very much for tuning in for today's podcast, St. Patrick's Day version, where I was drinking through all of it and kind of covering my ass with it. So, you know, one final thought, one final question. Yo, let me know what games you think are good that I may or may not have mentioned, and tell me why you think it's a good game, alright? And that's it. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe out there if you're drinking. If you're not drinking, that's okay too. Have a very good afternoon, evening, whatever. And we'll see you guys. Anime Fan Arcade 2 signing off. Peace.